What is going on, everybody? My name is Ryan from Askreddit Tells, and today we're going to be looking at some more of the top stories from r/MaliciousComplaince. Before we do, though, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to stay up to date on all the latest videos. Mandatory late night call after you made me hourly? Yes, sir. Please remember that I'm a native English speaker, typing on desktop keyboard, so any spelling/grammar mistakes are my own stupid fault. So quick background, I work for a national company, a real big one, which I will not name because I like being employed, and we have a big software system that the entire company relies on to wrap stuff up and get it ready for the client. It's that last choke point bottleneck where if it dies, literally all the work the rest of the company does is for naught. I run this system at the gruntwork day-to-day operational level. This system also typically has upgrades and fixes installed about every 2 weeks, and they always wait until late night on Friday to bring it down and do the install so that it doesn't impact our daily business. Now, when these installs occur, they always get a bunch of people on a call to go through everything and make sure all of it works before calling it good for Monday. Being the guy who runs the system all the time, I was always required to be on these calls. I hated them. The calls started at 10 p.m. Friday night, so I couldn't go out and enjoy my weekend. Would last about 2 hours, then the developers installed stuff, and at the very end, I pushed one button to kick things off so the suits could see that it was working and everybody was happy. This was literally money work, and everyone on those calls could have done it. I volunteered to teach them how, but no, they wanted me on the call. I was salary at the time, so not exactly like I could say no, and I wasn't getting paid anything extra for it. Can you see where this is going yet? Okay, so a few years ago, guidelines changed at the government level saying anyone who made XX $1,000 per year or less couldn't be defined as salary. They had to be hourly, to stop companies from abusing glorified part-time workers. I made more than that, but the company went overboard because I was somewhere in the general ballpark and they didn't want to risk it. So bam, now I'm hourly. Roughly 2 weeks later, it's deployment call time. I ask if I'm really required to be there or not. Boss man says yes. I don't complain because at least now I get paid for it. Oh, but wait, this isn't any normal deployment. No, this is a big one. They tell me I needed to be on the calls that will start up at 5 o'clock, right as I'd normally be clocking out for the day. Thinking it would be a quick check-in and then back out until 10, I dutifully call in. Nope, this call lasts from 5 until 10, when we got to take all of 5-minute breaks and get into the other call. Now I'm home shored, so I'm sitting on this call in my underwear, and nothing going on requires any input from me at all. Again, I'm not complaining because I'm getting paid for this, and I've got Netflix on in the background. Not only am I getting paid, since I did my full 40 hours that week already, this was overtime. So 10 o'clock deployment stuff starts going on, and by midnight we get to my part. I push the button, I tell them it's going to take about 20 to 30 minutes to process before we know if it worked. Half hour of twiddling thumbs later, it fails. Some cursing from dev as they go try to fix whatever borked. And I got to spend another 30 minutes resetting all the data so we can try again. Once everything's ready, I push the button. 30 minutes later, it fails again. Fast forward several hours, it's now 5 o'clock Saturday morning, it still hasn't run properly. Everybody's cranky except for me because baby, I got dollar signs in my eyes. 12 hours of overtime for watching Netflix and doing monkey work is gonna be sweet. Except it was even better than I thought at the time. That Saturday was technically some minor holiday. My company pays time and a half if you work on a holiday. So I had 7 hours of overtime and 5 hours of overtime with additional time and a half. I ended up making over half a week's pay overnight from that call. My boss flipped when he saw the check I was supposed to get. I reminded him that I asked in the email with half the team copied if he really needed me to be on that call, and he said I absolutely had to be. Unlike some of the bosses I read about on here, he swallowed his defeat gracefully. I got a huge paycheck that period, and oddly enough, I've not been required to attend a single one of those calls since then. Huh, I wonder why. Side note, Dev worked on it all weekend and got it running by Monday morning, so we're fine. Edited to fix the hours at the end because apparently I can't count. You want me to go work on that other project immediately? Sure thing, boss. So, I'm a software developer at a large 1,500-ish employee company. My official position is a software developer, but since I've got quite a bit of experience and somewhat non-standard skill set for this position, I've worked as a Linux admin and a DevOps engineer for about 2 years. I often get asked to do other things than just write code. I absolutely don't have a problem with that, and even quite enjoy doing other things from time to time to break up the monotony. Or rather, I did until one of the high-up managers noticed my particular skill set and started asking me to help out on other projects that were short on people. At first, I didn't really mind, but it eventually evolved into a situation where I would be reassigned to a different project every single week. A project change for me would mean downloading all their code, setting up the whole build and development environment, getting familiar with said project, and finally being able to do some work. This would usually take at least a day. I've tried talking to many different managers and tried to do something about this because it was starting to affect my performance reviews to no avail. Some of them would tell me they will look into it, others wouldn't even bother to reply to my emails. And that's where I got really fed up. Now, our project teams usually sit together. We have multiple large open space offices and a few smaller ones with just a few people. I'm one of the lucky ones who gets to sit in one of the small ones and usually wouldn't physically move for these teams' changes because then I would be moving every single week. On Monday morning, as usual, I get an email basically saying this: "You're needed on project XYZ immediately. Go over there to help as soon as you can." The immediately and go over there parts are where they made a fatal mistake. I've always been one to not take shit from anyone, and malicious compliance is my default, so I immediately took the hint and did exactly what I've been asked to do. I stopped working on my current project immediately. This will be very relevant later, and even though I usually wouldn't have done this, I decided to physically move to the team I've been reassigned to. So for the rest of the day, I've made a big spectacle of trying to move my entire workspace closer to that of a new project team, making sure to only carry one thing at a time as to not injure myself, to an office on a different floor on the other side of the building. The next morning, I just started working on the new project like nothing happened. Well, fast forward 3 weeks. The project I've been taken off has had huge delays and missed multiple client deadlines because of that thing I haven't been allowed to finish. In this industry, missing a client deadline means huge fines from both the client and sometimes also relevant government regulators. Managers started to reply to my emails and try to be much more careful with how they word their requests. I haven't been asked to switch projects for 3 weeks now. I'm not worried about getting fired. I've been looking for something new for quite a while now. Too long didn't read? Got asked to switch teams immediately, complied with the request, caused huge delays and fines from clients. Before you start bashing me in the comments, I tried going the peaceful route and it didn't work. Edit. Hey, my gold. My first gold. Thank you, stranger. Don't break the rules and then insist your staff enforce them. Whilst I was at a university, I worked in our students' hall. Basically a 2-story bar that was subsidized by the government. Because of the subsidy, it was the cheapest place in town, so we could get a couple of locals to come in. To prevent this, we were supposed to check everyone has a student ID, but no one minded as the locals were usually polite and handled their booze better than most students. My manager, who was a local himself, would encourage locals to come, and would either discourage ID checks or simply not inform new staff of the situation. He would often steal from the bar and would give free drinks to his mates. One night, he had a bunch of his buddies in town come in, having a drink session at the bar's expense. Paid for maybe 1 out of 5 drinks, till way past closing and beyond our license. This resulted in the police being called for a noise complaint, and his boss, Hall's head, finding out. To cover his ass, he claimed that the group were locals that we, the bar staff, had happily allowed to stay, and then he fudged the accounting for the night to make up for the free drinks. Because of this, he himself demanded we check every student ID, and the head took away some of our employee perks. The Sunday after this all went down, the pool tournament guys come in. These guys rotate which bar they go to every week between a list of maybe 6 that have had enough pool tables and lounge spaces. I personally had served them half a dozen times. They make their way over to the bar and find the first guy as well into his 40s. Me. "Hey man, before I serve you, I have to see your student ID." He chuckled and said something along the lines of, "Do I look like a student?" and proceeded to order. "Look, I'm sorry, but I've been told that if you haven't got a student ID, I can't serve you." He started to realize I wasn't just messing with him and looked at the other member of staff, who reiterated the point. "Are you serious? We've been coming here for years. "Yeah, sorry, manager's name is cracking down on the only students rule. I can grab my supervisor for you if you want." My supervisor was also a student and explained the situation. Said he was sorry for the inconvenience and that if they had any complaints, to call the head, my manager's boss, and even gave out a couple of his cards that were in his office. The pool guys left, which meant no one was really in the building, so we ended up closing early. Next morning, I awoke to my manager screaming down the phone at me. But it was my day off, so I hung up and didn't go to work as a customer till past noon. When I did, my coworkers couldn't wait to tell me what happened. My manager had come in and had a shouting match with my supervisor in front of everyone grabbing a morning coffee. The head had indeed received some complaints and scheduled a meeting with the manager that morning. Not wanting to face it alone, he took my supervisor with him. I imagine intending to throw him under the bus as much as possible. The head was pissed, A, because all these 40-something men had called to complain on his personal number on Sunday, B, because these 40-something men, by their own admission, had been coming here for years at the invite of the manager, whom they knew well. My manager tries to save face and claims they were associated with the university, that they were in fact lectures, and that it was the bar staff failing to check the student IDs all this time, and then turned on my supervisor, saying he'd given them a bad reputation, costing them money by turning them away, and closing early as well as laying bare every other mistake he had ever made. My supervisor explained that it was never explained to staff that customers had to be students, as the manager actively encouraged locals to come in, that even lectures get a form of student ID, and explained to the head about managers drinking with his mates and the dodgy accounting he'd do. This led to the CCTV being checked. When the head saw that it was in fact the manager and his mates, the bar staff rarely put anything through the tills at his request, suspended him on the spot. He then said that the accounts would need to be re-audited and that he would likely be terminated and even prosecuted. After a surreal couple of weeks, we got our perks back. They hired a new manager and eventually they installed locks on the doors that could only be opened with a student ID. No idea what happened to the old manager, but by no means a loss. And that about does it for today's video. If you liked it, make sure to check out some of our other stuff and even subscribe. As always, my name's Ryan Cole, the official host of Askreddit Tells, and I look forward to seeing you guys in tomorrow's video.